I'm Cecilia Barros and I'm a provisional psychologist under APRA, and I have been studying in Australia for the last 2.5, almost 3 years in a week. I did my undergraduate, my bachelor in psychological science, and then my honors in psychological science as well. And I did my thesis on the effects of visual and auditory distraction on the psychophysiology in open plan offices. So I wanted to talk about these really important topics, and that there's been a lot of confusion and a lot of students, people that are provisional psychologists, and just trying to get into the field of psychology about how can you become a psychologist in Australia? How does it work? There are many different pathways, and today I'm just going to do a little basic overview of what they are, how you can become a psychologist, what are the different types of psychologists. I don't plan this video to be too long because there's so much more information, and every single time I remember while I was studying, I got one question answered, another one would pop up, and I would just have to keep doing more and more research. The reason that I want to do this is because it's such a big problem right now. So many people are so confused about all these different pathways. One of them is going away. So I just wanted to get all these questions answered, and I just wanted to talk about that. I want this to be, an open discussion, people to understand more about psychology in Australia, because it can be quite confusing for a lot of people, and because I wish there was someone that I could have gone to that kind of just gave clear, unbiased information. So the first pathway that I want to talk about is to become a generally registered psychologist, and that's the one that I'm in. There are different pathways, so don't worry, we're going to get through all of them. So the first two pathways is the 4+2 and the 5+1. So the 4+2 is you do your bachelor's, you do your honors or your postgraduate diploma, and then you will do 2 years of an internship. In that internship, you have specifications that you do need to go through. It's about, for the 4+2, it's 3,000 hours in total, where you need to do client contact, professional development, supervision, all these different things. You need to write case reports, and then you take the national psychology exam. And then after that, once you pass, you can become a generally registered psychologist. The next pathway that I'm going to talk about is the 5+1 pathway. So it's your undergraduate, then your honors or your postgraduate diploma in psychological science, and then it will be a master's of professional psychology. And then you will do a 1-year internship. So instead of 2 years like the 4+2, it's a 1 year. And then you will have to take the national psychology exam as well. And once you pass that, you will become a generally registered psychologist. It's not that confusing. There are different specifications for each pathway. Something that you might have heard is that the 4+2 pathway will be retiring in June of 2022. The reason for that is because the 4+2 pathway doesn't follow the international guidelines to become a psychologist. Now, there aren't specific guidelines per se, but if you have the 4+2, it does make it harder for you to become a psychologist outside of Australia. Therefore, they created the 5+1, which creates a 1-year master's program, which then makes it easier for you to become a psychologist in other places. I will be posting this on the resources below, so you can just click that and find out yourself, but I'm just walking through it because it does get a little bit confusing. So these two pathways are for you to become a generally registered psychologist. Now, I will make a video talking about the difference between a general psychologist and an endorsed or specified psychologist. But for today, let's just understand that there are two different types of psychologists. The second pathway is the master's pathway, which is you will do your undergraduate, your honors or your postgraduate diploma, and then you will do a 2-year master's program. And then you'll have to do 2 years of supervision afterwards, so that you can become endorsed in an area. So for example, there are 9 different master's programs that you can do to become a psychologist in an endorsed area. There's clinical psychology, forensic psychology, education development psychology, counseling psychology, organizational psychology, community psychology, health psychology, sports exercise psychology, and clinical nursing psychology. So there are many different pathways. So for you to become a psychologist in an endorsed pathway, you will need to do 2 years of that degree that you want, of that master's degree, and then you will have to do 2 years of supervision in that for you to get the registration for that. And then there's also the master's and PhD pathway. So you can do a combined master's and PhD in 4 years. Now, it is very competitive. A lot of people can do it, but it is stressful. You will only have to do one thesis, but it is your PhD thesis. Within that, you're going to have all of your master's coursework and all of your PhD coursework done and smashed into 4 years together. And then afterwards, you will have to do the 2 years of supervision for you to become endorsed in the master's that you did it in. Does that make sense? So I'll just do a little recap. You have to do, for just the master's pathway, you have to do undergrad, honors or postgraduate diploma, master's, and then 2 years afterwards for you to become endorsed in that area. So you can't just study the master's. You will need to have specific, supervision and work on the area. And there are 9 different degrees that you can do that in. So it's very broad and you can work a lot in that. And then the next one is the PhD, master's PhD pathway. So that, for a lot of people, you might have heard of the clinical PhD pathway. That's that one. But they also have in other degrees, like forensic PhD. So to do that pathway, you will do undergrad, honors or postgraduate diploma, master's, and PhD combined together into 4 years. And then the 2 years of supervision afterwards. So that kind of pushes it together so that, if you still want to do a master's and a PhD, you don't need to do 4 years, for you to become endorsed. And then another 4 years of PhD, kind of just mash it up together. So those are all of the pathways. I'm going to try to keep it this way because it can get a little bit more confusing. For example, now they have bridging courses. So if you're a general psychologist, you can take a 1-year bridging course to become an endorsed psychologist. And so they're adding this so that general psychologists don't have to do a whole 2-year master's degree. They can only do a 1-year master's degree and not have to do an extra thesis. And then they'll be able to do 1 year or 2, depending on the specification, for them to become a specific or endorsed psychologist. And lastly, the question that you're still asking, what about research? Well, for you to become a researcher, you do not have to become a psychologist. You do not have to be registered to do research. You can do your undergraduate, your honors, and then go straight to a PhD, which is 4 years full-time or 8 years part-time. You do not have to be a registered psychologist for you to do a PhD, and that's completely okay as well. So I hope that kind of explained all your questions, or not all of them, but some of them. I will be doing videos specific to every single pathway, going into specifications, what things that you need to do. The one that I'm doing right now is the 4+2, so I'll be able to do that one first, give an explanation, why is it ending, what will happen, when will it end, and also how you can apply to start the 4+2. What things do you need to do the 4+2? What forms do you need for the 4+2? There's a lot to it, and I'm going to be covering all of that. I'll cover that 4+2, 5+1 masters, and also the master's PhD one. So yeah, please keep up with, the work that I'm doing. I just want to be here to help you and to try to make things make a little bit more sense because it can get really confusing. Thank you.